Tom Harrington is an ordinary mechanic in a small Arizona town who quietly spends his days fixing cars for locals, while his own dreams of creating prosthetics slowly fade under the weight of daily worries and loneliness. One day, a mysterious woman in a wheelchair enters his workshop asking him to repair her prosthetic leg, a visit that will forever change his life, transporting him from his humble auto shop into a world of cutting-edge technology and corporate politics. When the truth about his new client's identity is revealed, Tom finds himself at a crossroads between staying true to his roots and the opportunity to transform thousands of lives, while simultaneously risking his own heart in a game where the stakes grow higher with each passing day. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. Subscribe to our channel, it's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Harrington's auto repair, its rays reflecting off the corrugated metal roof and casting shimmering waves of heat across the cracked asphalt. Tom Harrington wiped sweat from his brow with a rag that had seen better days, just like everything else in his workshop, including himself. At 58, the salt and pepper hair and creases around his eyes told stories of countless hours spent beneath car hoods and behind welding masks. "Mrs. Peterson's Buick is acting up again," he muttered to himself, smiling slightly as he slid beneath the vehicle. Same problem as always. She never checked her oil. These moments defined his life now, not because they paid well, they rarely did, but because they connected him to the community of Riverdale, Arizona, where everyone knew everyone else's business and called him when their engines made strange noises. 3 framed certificates hung crooked on the wall behind his cluttered desk, barely visible through years of accumulated desert dust. They spoke of technical excellence and mechanical innovation, dreams from another life that had slowly faded into the comfortable routine of small-town existence. Tom had once imagined designing prosthetics for veterans, inspired by his time serving as a mechanic in the Army. But life took a different turn when his father's health failed, bringing him back to Riverdale to take over the family business. The workshop hummed with the steady drone of the ancient ceiling fan and the occasional ping of cooling metal. Tom moved between the 3 vehicles currently occupying his bay spaces: a minivan with transmission troubles, a pickup truck needing brake work, and an old Volkswagen Beetle that would need more love than its owner could probably afford. He approached each with the same methodical attention, the same respect for the engineering beneath their hoods. His own innovations were scattered throughout the shop: a modified lift system he designed for working on heavier vehicles, custom tools he'd fabricated when standard ones wouldn't do the job, and a computer system cobbled together from spare parts that ran surprisingly efficient diagnostic software he'd coded himself. These were the fruits of late nights when sleep wouldn't come, when the emptiness of his small apartment above the shop drove him back downstairs to tinker and create. The local newspaper lay open on his desk, folded to the classifieds where he'd circled an ad for an apprentice. 20 years ago, he would have had young mechanics lining up for the chance to learn at Harrington's. Now, with the chain stores and their flashy diagnostics machines drawing all the business to the highway, he struggled to keep up with the work on his own. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be, and the days felt longer, but there was pride in every repair, every solution crafted from experience and intuition. Tom checked his appointment book, a leather-bound volume his mother had given him when he first took over the shop. Running his finger down the day's schedule, he noted the open slot at 2 p.m. Something about that empty space made him pause, as if it were waiting for something important. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward noon, and Tom straightened his back, ready to face another day of coaxing life back into machines that others might have given up on. He couldn't know that the empty slot in his schedule would bring something far more challenging than any engine he'd ever repaired. Something that would require him to fix not just a piece of machinery, but perhaps his own heart as well. The afternoon heat had reached its peak when the unfamiliar sound of wheels on gravel drew Tom's attention. Through the workshop's open door, he watched a woman navigate her wheelchair with precise movements, her determination evident in every push forward. Her dark hair caught the sunlight, and despite the obvious strain of movement, she held herself with unmistakable dignity. "Hello," she called out, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to fill the dusty space. "I'm looking for Mr. Harrington." Tom stepped out from behind the Volkswagen he'd been working on, wiping his hands on his shop rag. That would be me, Tom Harrington." He noticed the way her prosthetic leg moved stiffly with each small adjustment of her position, the mechanical joints protesting with quiet squeaks. She was younger than him by at least 15 years, maybe 40 or so, with warm brown eyes that held both intelligence and caution. "Elena Martinez," she replied, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her smile genuine, though he could see the tension around her eyes. "I heard you're the man who can fix anything." "I do my best," Tom said, suddenly conscious of the grease under his fingernails. "What can I help you with?" Elena gestured to her prosthetic leg. "It's not exactly a carburetor, but I was hoping you might take a look. The hydraulics are failing, and the closest prosthetics clinic is 3 hours away." She paused, a flash of vulnerability crossing her face. "And honestly, I can't afford their prices right now." Tom knelt to examine the prosthetic, his experienced eyes taking in the worn components and makeshift repairs. It was a basic model, functional but far from the advanced units he'd seen in his research years ago. "May I?" he asked, waiting for her nod before gently testing the joint movement. "The response is delayed," Elena explained, watching his careful examination, "and sometimes it locks up entirely. I've been managing with WD-40 and hope, but..." She let out a small laugh that couldn't quite hide her frustration. Tom felt something stir in his chest, a familiar excitement he got when faced with an interesting technical challenge, but mixed with something else. Something about the way she spoke, the quiet strength in her voice, resonated with him. "Mind telling me how this happened?" he asked, continuing his inspection. "Might help me understand what we're dealing with." "Car accident 3 years ago," Elena replied, her voice matter-of-fact but with an undercurrent of emotion. "I was lucky, really. Some people lose a lot more." She adjusted her position, and Tom noticed how she winced slightly at the movement. "This model," Tom began, recognition dawning. "It's a Martinez Series 3, isn't it? Basic but reliable. Or it should be." Elena's eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. "You know prosthetics? Used to dream of designing them, actually. Back when I got out of the Army." Tom stood, his knees protesting the movement. "Never got the chance to pursue it, but I kept up with the field. Sort of a hobby now." A moment of understanding passed between them, and Elena's smile softened. "Seems like more than a hobby, Mr. Harrington." "Tom," he corrected gently. "And maybe you're right." He moved to his workbench, already mentally cataloging the tools and materials he'd need. "I can't promise anything, but I'd like to try helping, if you'll trust a mechanic with this." "Trust has to start somewhere," Elena said, watching him gather tools. She hesitated, then added, "Though I should warn you, my schedule's a bit unpredictable. I might need to work around some commitments." Tom caught something in her tone, a careful choice of words that suggested there was more to her story. But everyone had their secrets, and right now what mattered was the challenge before him. Miss Martinez." "Elena," she interrupted with a smile. "Elena," he continued, returning the smile. "Let's see what we can do about getting you moving more smoothly." He pulled up his worn office chair for her. "First, tell me exactly when these problems started." As Elena began describing the prosthetics deterioration, Tom found himself drawn not just to the technical puzzle, but to the way her eyes lit up when she spoke. The subtle hints of humor in her descriptions, the grace with which she handled her limitations. Her presence brought something new to his workshop, a warmth that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun still streaming through the windows. Neither of them could have known then how this simple consultation would change both their lives. But as Tom listened and made notes in his weathered notebook, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The sensation that he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. By the time Elena left, the afternoon had faded into early evening. Tom sat at his workbench, surrounded by sketches and technical manuals he hadn't touched in years. The workshop's overhead lights cast a yellow glow over the papers, his pencil moving swiftly across graph paper as he worked out preliminary designs. The broken prosthetic lay before him, its worn components telling a story of makeshift repairs and daily struggles. "What are you thinking, old man?" he muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair. The challenge before him was far more complex than anything he'd tackled in years. One wrong calculation, one misaligned component, and he could make things worse instead of better. His computer screen displayed research he'd been doing since Elena left. Patents, technical specifications, medical requirements. The more he read, the more he realized how far prosthetic technology had advanced since his Army days. But the newest designs were far beyond what he could create with his limited resources. The wall clock showed 11:30 p.m. when his phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Just wanted to check if you're still willing to take this on. No pressure if it's too complicated." Tom smiled, typing back, already started. Get some rest. He hesitated, then added, see you tomorrow at 2? Her response came quickly. I'll bring coffee. The promise of coffee shouldn't have made his heart beat faster, but it did. Tom turned back to his sketches, energized. He'd need to fabricate custom components. The hydraulic system would be the biggest challenge, but maybe. He moved to his storage room, pulling out boxes of salvaged parts he'd collected over the years. Aircraft hydraulics, precision automotive components, high-grade materials that were too good to throw away. Each piece represented a potential solution, a way to craft something unique. The night deepened as Tom worked, measuring, calculating, testing ideas. He created 3 different design concepts, each with its own advantages and challenges. The first focused on durability, using reinforced joints and a simplified hydraulic system. The second prioritized smooth movement with more complex mechanics but higher maintenance needs. The third was a hybrid approach, balancing reliability with function. Around 2 a.m., he found himself staring at his father's old toolbox. What would you think of this, Dad? He wondered aloud. Your son, the mechanic, trying to build something that belongs in a medical lab. He could almost hear his father's voice. Tools are tools, son. It's the heart behind them that matters. Dawn was breaking when Tom finally crawled up to his apartment above the shop. His dreams were filled with mechanical drawings and Elena's smile. Whatever tomorrow would bring, he knew one thing for certain. Something had changed in his dusty workshop, and the empty space in his schedule had brought far more than just another repair job. What would happen when Elena returned tomorrow? And what secrets was she hiding behind those cautious eyes? The next afternoon, Elena arrived precisely at 2, balancing 2 coffee cups on her lap as she maneuvered through the door. Tom hurried to help her, trying not to notice how his fingers tingled when they brushed against hers. Black, 2 sugars, she said, handing him a cup. Good guess, he replied, surprised. Most people assume you'd want it with cream. A knowing smile played at the corners of her mouth as she wheeled herself to his workbench, her eyes widening at the array of sketches. You've been busy. Couldn't sleep, Tom admitted, spreading out the 3 main designs. I have some ideas, but I need your input. You're the one who will be using it. For the next hour, they pored over the designs together. Elena asked surprisingly technical questions, showing an understanding that went beyond what Tom would expect from most patients. When he mentioned this, she smiled mysteriously. I've had 3 years to learn everything I can about prosthetics, she said. Knowledge is power, right? Tom noticed how she leaned forward when particularly interested in a detail, how her fingers traced the lines of his drawings with careful precision. There was something almost familiar about her analytical approach, but he couldn't place it. This hybrid design, she said, pointing to his third concept. It's innovative. I've never seen this kind of adaptation of automotive hydraulics for prosthetic use. It's not conventional, Tom acknowledged. Might not work at all, but if it does... He trailed off, watching her face light up with understanding. If it does, it could be replicated at a fraction of the cost of current systems, she finished his thought. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Elena broke the silence first, clearing her throat. How long do you think it would take to build? 2 weeks, maybe 3, Tom estimated. I'll need to fabricate some custom parts, run multiple tests. We can't rush this. No, she agreed softly. We can't. She checked her phone, and a shadow crossed her face. I have a meeting I can't miss, but I want to help with this, Tom, not just as a patient. I have some experience with product development that might be useful. There it was again, that hint of something more in her background. But Tom just nodded. Same time tomorrow? Actually, Elena said, I was thinking of coming by in the evening. Fewer interruptions if that works for you. The prospect of evening work sessions with Elena made Tom's pulse quicken. Works for me. I'm usually here anyway. As he watched her leave, Tom realized he was in dangerous territory. This project was awakening something in him, not just his old dreams of prosthetic design, but feelings he'd thought long buried. And Elena, there was more to her story than she was sharing, but standing amid his sketches and tools, coffee cup still warm in his hand, Tom knew he was already too invested to turn back. Whatever secrets Elena might be keeping, whatever challenges lay ahead, he was committed now to the project and perhaps to something more. The evening sessions with Elena quickly became the highlight of Tom's days. They fell into an easy routine. She would arrive as the sun was setting, often bringing dinner along with coffee, and they would work late into the night. The workshop, usually filled with the sounds of engines and tools, now resonated with their conversations and shared laughter. Tonight, Elena had brought Chinese takeout, and they sat at his workbench, blueprints pushed aside to make room for containers of kung pao chicken and chow mein. Tom watched as she deftly manipulated the chopsticks, noticing how she'd adapted her movements to maintain perfect control despite her wheelchair. "You're staring," she said, not looking up from her food. "Sorry," Tom replied, feeling his ears redden. "I was just admiring your technique with those. I can barely manage a fork some days." Elena laughed, a sound that seemed to brighten the whole workshop. "Years of practice. You should have seen me the first few months after the accident. I wore more food than I ate." "What happened?" Tom asked softly, realizing this was the first time she'd mentioned the accident since their initial meeting. "If you don't mind talking about it." Elena was quiet for a moment, pushing noodles around her container. Rain-slicked roads. A truck driver who'd fallen asleep at the wheel. The usual story. She looked up, meeting his eyes. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part was what came after. What came after? Learning to live differently. Finding out who your real friends are. Discovering that some doors close. She gestured to her prosthetic leg, while others open. Her eyes traveled around the workshop, taking in the organized chaos of tools and parts. Like this one. Tom felt the weight of her words, understanding there was more she wasn't saying. Must have been tough going through that alone. "Who says I was alone?" Elena responded, but something in her tone suggested otherwise. She quickly changed the subject. "How's the hydraulic system coming along?" Tom recognized the deflection but didn't push. Instead, he reached for the prototype they'd been working on. "Made some progress today. Want to see?" The prototype was beginning to take shape, a marriage of automotive precision and medical necessity. Tom had adapted a small hydraulic system from a high-end racing clutch, modifying it to provide the smooth, controlled movement Elena needed. The outer casing was still rough, but the internal mechanisms were nearly complete. "The response time is the tricky part," he explained, demonstrating the action. "Too fast and it's jarring. Too slow and it feels unnatural. We need to find exactly the right balance." Elena wheeled closer, her shoulder brushing against his as she leaned in to examine the mechanism. Tom tried to ignore the warmth of her presence, the subtle scent of her shampoo. "What if," she said, reaching past him to point at a particular component, "we adjusted the pressure here?" "In my experience," she stopped abruptly. "Your experience?" Tom prompted gently. Elena withdrew slightly and Tom could almost see her internal debate. Finally, she sighed. "I may have done some consulting work in medical device development before the accident." "Some consulting work," Tom repeated, pieces starting to fall into place. Her technical knowledge, her understanding of product development, those mysterious meetings she had to attend. "Elena, who are you really?" She met his gaze steadily. "Someone who's tired of being defined by her name or her bank account. Can that be enough for now?" Tom studied her face, the genuine plea in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. Whatever her secret was, it clearly weighed on her. "Yeah," he said finally, "that can be enough." Relief flooded her features, and she gave him a smile that made his heart skip. "Thank you, Tom." They worked late that night, the prototype taking shape under their combined expertise. Elena's suggestions, drawn from what she now admitted was extensive experience in medical device development, proved invaluable. Tom found himself repeatedly impressed by her technical insight and practical solutions. As midnight approached, he noticed her stifling a yawn. "We should call it a night," he said, reluctant to end their time together but concerned about her fatigue. "Just a little longer," she protested, but her eyes were heavy. "We're so close to solving the pressure distribution issue." "The prototype will still be here tomorrow," Tom assured her, already moving to help clear their dinner containers. "Speaking of which, will you be coming by?" Elena's face fell slightly. "I have meetings all day tomorrow. Corporate stuff I can't reschedule, but I could come by the day after." "The day after is perfect," Tom said, trying not to show his disappointment about missing a day. He'd grown accustomed to their evening routine. The way they worked together, the comfortable silences punctuated by bursts of technical discussion and personal revelations. As he helped her navigate toward the door, Elena paused. "Tom," she turned her wheelchair to face him, "thank you for not pushing about who I am. It's refreshing." "We all have our story," he replied. "They come out when they're ready." She reached up and squeezed his hand, the touch sending electricity through his arm. "Good night, Tom." After she left, Tom stood in the workshop doorway, watching until her car's taillights disappeared around the corner. The night air was cool, but his hand still felt warm where she had touched it. He turned back to the workbench, to the prototype they were creating together, and realized that somewhere between the technical discussions and shared meals, Elena Martinez had become more than just a client. Much more. What was she hiding? And why did a woman who clearly had resources and connections seek out a small-town mechanic for a project like this? The questions gnawed at him as he cleaned up their workspace, but one thing was certain. Elena Martinez was unlike anyone he'd ever met, and he was in deeper than he'd ever intended to be. The next day dragged by without her. Tom went through the motions, replaced a transmission, fixed a radiator leak, ordered parts for Mrs. Peterson's perpetually oil-starved Buick, but his mind kept drifting to the prototype on his workbench and the woman who had breathed new life into his forgotten dreams. Late that evening, as he tinkered with the hydraulic mechanism, trying to implement one of Elena's suggestions, his phone buzzed with a text. "Can't wait to see our progress tomorrow. Been thinking about a new approach to the pressure valve design all day. Sleep well." Tom smiled at the screen, typing back, "Workshop's too quiet without you arguing about hydraulic pressures. See you tomorrow." He set down his phone and reached for his father's toolbox, pulling out a specialized wrench his father had modified decades ago. "I think I'm in trouble, Dad," he murmured to the empty workshop, "and I'm not sure I want to get out of it." The next morning, Tom woke earlier than usual, driven by a new idea for the pressure distribution system. By noon, he had fabricated a prototype component, and by the time afternoon customers started arriving, he was almost vibrating with anticipation to show Elena his progress. But as the day wore on, he couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Who was Elena Martinez really? And what would happen when he finally discovered the truth behind her careful deflections and mysterious meetings? Whatever she was hiding, Tom suspected it would change everything between them. The question was whether what they'd built together, both the prosthetic and their connection, was strong enough to withstand the revelation. As the sun began to set, painting the Arizona sky in brilliant oranges and reds, Tom swept the workshop floor, his eyes continually darting to the door. Any minute now, Elena would arrive, and another evening of creation and connection would begin. But would it be their last? The sound of tires on gravel pulled Tom from his thoughts. He glanced at the clock, 6:15 p.m., earlier than Elena usually arrived. Setting down his tools, he moved toward the door, expecting to see her familiar car. Instead, a sleek black BMW SUV with tinted windows pulled up alongside his workshop. Tom frowned, watching as the driver's door opened and a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped out. The stranger surveyed the workshop with a critical eye before noticing Tom in the doorway. "Mr. Harrington?" The man's voice was polished, professional. "I'm looking for Elena Martinez. I was told she might be here." Tom crossed his arms, instantly on guard. "And you are?" "Michael Davidson, Chief Operating Officer at Martinez Medical Technologies." He extended a business card with a logo Tom recognized immediately, the same manufacturer's mark that was on Elena's prosthetic. Tom accepted the card mechanically, pieces clicking together in his mind. Martinez Medical Technologies, one of the largest medical device companies in the country, known for cutting-edge prosthetics that cost more than most people made in a year. And Elena Martinez, "She's not here," Tom said, struggling to keep his voice neutral. "Expected later." The executive checked his watch with a frown. "Miss Martinez missed an important board meeting this afternoon. Her assistant said she might be working on a personal project." He glanced around the workshop again, his expression making it clear what he thought of Tom's humble operation. "You're welcome to wait," Tom offered, not entirely meaning it. "No need. Please tell her to check her messages when she arrives. The board is concerned." Without waiting for a response, the man returned to his vehicle and drove away, leaving Tom standing in the doorway with the business card clutched in his hand. Martinez Medical Technologies. Elena Martinez. It couldn't be a coincidence. Tom returned to his workbench, mind racing. He pulled up his laptop and typed Elena Martinez MMT into the search engine. The results loaded instantly. Numerous articles, interviews, and photos of Elena at corporate events, medical conferences, and charity galas. One headline in particular caught his eye. MMT CEO Elena Martinez makes first public appearance since accident. The photo showed Elena in her wheelchair at a medical device symposium, looking every bit the powerful executive in a tailored suit, her hair pulled back severely, so different from the casual woman who sat at his workbench eating Chinese food with chopsticks. "CEO," Tom whispered, staring at the image. "Not just an employee or consultant. the head of a billion-dollar medical device empire. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Her technical knowledge, her mysterious meetings, the way she spoke about corporate pressure. But why would the CEO of one of the most successful medical companies in the country come to a small-town mechanic for help with a prosthetic? It made no sense. Unless Tom scrolled through more articles, each one revealing another facet of Elena's life that she'd kept hidden from him. A feature in Business Weekly described her as the brilliant heir to the Martinez medical fortune, who transformed her father's modest medical supply company into a prosthetics powerhouse. Another profile detailed her education, degrees in biomedical engineering and business from Stanford, with patents to her name even before taking over the company. One article from 3 years ago caught his attention. Martinez medical CEO critically injured in highway accident. The piece described the crash that had cost Elena her leg, but also mentioned rumors of tensions within the company as Martinez pushes for more affordable product lines against shareholder resistance. Tom sat back, trying to process everything. The woman he'd come to know, the one who laughed at his jokes, who worked alongside him until midnight, who looked at him with warmth that had nothing to do with prosthetic design, was also Elena Martinez, CEO and majority shareholder of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. A woman who could have accessed the finest prosthetic specialists in the world, yet had chosen to come to him. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of another vehicle. He quickly closed his laptop as Elena's car pulled up outside. Taking a deep breath, he moved toward the door, unsure of what to say or how to confront her. Elena wheeled herself in, her face lighting up when she saw him. She wore casual clothes today, jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her look younger, more approachable. So different from the corporate executive in the photos. "I brought sandwiches from that deli you mentioned," she said, holding up a paper bag. "The owner said you always get the pastrami on rye, so I hope that's still your favorite." She stopped, noticing his expression. To Tom, "What's wrong?" He hesitated, then pulled the business card from his pocket, placing it on the workbench between them. "You had a visitor, Michael Davidson. He said the board is concerned." Elena's smile faded, her shoulders tensing visibly. She stared at the card, then slowly raised her eyes to meet his. "How much do you know?" "Enough," Tom replied quietly. "Martinez Medical Technologies. You're not just affiliated with them, are you, Elena?" "You're the CEO," she nodded, her expression a mixture of resignation and relief. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have treated me the same if I had?" She wheeled closer, her eyes pleading for understanding. "From the moment I lost my leg, people have either seen me as an object of pity or as Elena Martinez, billionaire CEO. For once, I wanted to be just Elena, a woman with a problem that needed solving." Tom ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. "But your company makes prosthetics, advanced ones. Why come to me?" Elena sighed, gesturing toward the prototype on the workbench. "Because what you're creating here isn't bound by corporate red tape or shareholder expectations. It's pure innovation, driven by a desire to help, not to profit." She moved to the window, looking out at the setting sun. "After my accident, I pushed our R&D department to develop better, more affordable prosthetics. The board resisted. The profit margins were too slim, they said. Then when we finally got a prototype into testing, corners had been cut. A patient was injured, not seriously, but enough to shake my faith in the system." She turned back to face him. "I swore then that I would find a different way. So I'm what? An experiment?" The words tasted bitter in Tom's mouth. "No!" Elena's response was immediate, her eyes flashing. "Your hope, Tom. Hope that someone with raw talent and pure intentions could create something that my entire corporate structure couldn't. And you did." She gestured toward their prototype. Tom stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman he'd come to care for with this new information. "Huh. Why continue the charade? Why not tell me once we started working together?" Elena's shoulders slumped slightly. "Because every time I started to tell you, I remembered how it felt to be just Elena with you. Not the CEO, not the sad story in the financial papers, just me." She met his gaze. "I was selfish. I wanted to hold on to that feeling as long as possible." The workshop fell silent, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the soft tick of the old wall clock. Tom moved to his toolbox, needing something to do with his hands while he processed everything. "The pressure valve adjustment," he said finally, his back still to her. "That was your idea, wasn't it? Not something you'd seen, something you'd designed." "Yes," she admitted. Before the accident, I was more involved in design. I have patents on several hydraulic systems. Tom turned to face her, the pieces finally fitting together. The Martinez Series 3. It's not named after the company. The company is named after you. Elena nodded. My father started it. I took over after he died, just before my accident. Tom leaned against the workbench, feeling the weight of everything she'd kept from him. Yet somehow, amid the confusion and hurt, he found himself understanding her reasons. Hadn't he also longed to be seen for who he really was? Not just as the local mechanic who never left town to pursue his dreams? I need some air, he said abruptly, moving toward the door. I need to think. Elena didn't try to stop him, though he could see the fear in her eyes. Fear that she had destroyed whatever had been building between them. I understand, she said softly. Take all the time you need. Tom stepped outside into the cooling evening air, his mind a jumble of conflicting emotions. The sun was setting over the distant mountains, painting the desert landscape in shades of orange and purple. He walked to the edge of the property, where a weathered bench sat beneath an old mesquite tree, a spot where he sometimes took lunch breaks or thought through particularly challenging mechanical problems. Today's problem, however, wasn't mechanical. It was deeply, messily human. He sat heavily on the bench, staring at the horizon without really seeing it. Elena Martinez, CO, the woman whose company made the very prosthetics he had dreamed of designing. The woman who had chosen to come to him, a small-town mechanic, rather than use her vast resources and connections. Why? The question circled in his mind, along with fragments of their conversations over the past weeks. Her enthusiasm when he'd suggested unconventional approaches. Her insight into manufacturing processes and material science. The way she lit up when they solved a particularly challenging design issue together. And other moments, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes. How she'd listened intently when he spoke of his army days and abandoned dreams. The comfortable silences that had grown between them as they worked side by side late into the night. Which version of Elena was real? The corporate executive or the woman who'd shared Chinese takeout with him on his cluttered workbench? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe the truth was more complicated than any simple categorization could capture. Tom's thoughts were interrupted by the crunch of gravel. He looked up to see Elena wheeling herself toward him, her expression uncertain. She stopped a few feet away, respecting his need for space. I was going to leave, she said quietly. But then I realized we've spent weeks solving problems together. Running away from this one seemed wrong. Despite everything, Tom felt a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. Not a standard prosthetic issue. No, Elena agreed, a ghost of a smile echoing his. Much more complicated. She wheeled closer, stopping beside the bench. I understand if you feel betrayed, Tom. I wasn't honest about who I am. But please believe me when I say that everything else, every moment we've shared, every conversation, every laugh, that was all real. More real than anything in my life has been since before the accident. Tom was quiet for a long moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I keep thinking about why, he said finally. Why me? Why not use your company's resources? Why the secrecy? Elena took a deep breath. After the accident, I lost more than my leg. I lost my sense of purpose. The company my father built to help people had become this corporate machine driven by profit margins and shareholder expectations. She gestured vaguely toward the distant city lights. I was trapped in it, fighting against a system I was supposed to be leading. She looked down at her hands. Then one day I was visiting a supplier in Riverdale. My prosthetic was acting up, the same one we've been working on. Someone mentioned this mechanic who could fix anything. A small smile touched her lips. They said, if Tom Harrington can't fix it, it can't be fixed. Mrs. Peterson, Tom guessed. She's my biggest PR representative. She was very convincing, Elena confirmed, her smile widening briefly before growing serious again. I came here on a whim, not expecting anything. But then I saw you work. The way you approached the problem, the respect you had for both the engineering and the human element. It was everything our R&D department had lost. She met his eyes. I didn't plan to keep coming back. I certainly didn't plan to start a secret development project. But after that first day, I couldn't stop thinking about the possibilities. And I couldn't bear the thought of bringing corporate politics into your workshop, not when your fresh perspective was exactly what was needed. Tom considered her words, finding in them an echo of his own professional frustrations, the constraints of expectations, the limiting frameworks of how things should be done. He'd felt those boundaries in his own small-town context, just as Elena had felt them in her corporate one. "So what happens now?" he asked, the practical mechanic in him needing to understand the path forward. Elena pulled an envelope from her bag, holding it but not yet offering it to him. "That depends on you, Tom. If you want me to leave and never come back, I understand. But if you're willing to hear me out—" She took a deep breath. "I have a proposition." "What kind of proposition?" "A partnership. Full funding to develop and manufacture your design, with you heading the development division. No corporate interference, no rush deadlines, just your vision with the resources to make it reality." Tom's eyebrows rose. "You want me to work for you?" "With me," Elena corrected. "As equals in this venture. What you've created here—" She gestured back toward the workshop where their prototype waited. "It's exactly what the medical device industry needs. Affordable, reliable prosthetics that could help thousands of people who can't afford the current options." The possibility was dizzying. Everything he'd once dreamed of, the chance to design, to innovate, to make a difference, suddenly within reach. Yet something held him back. "The board would never go for it," he said. "Bringing in an unknown mechanic to lead a division? With no corporate experience? No formal medical training?" Elena's smile turned confident, a glimpse of the CEO beneath the casual exterior. "The board serves at my pleasure, not the other way around. I own controlling interest in Martinez Medical. I've let them have their way for too long, pushing us toward higher margins and away from my father's original vision." Her eyes flashed with determination. "That changes now." Tom stood, needing to move as his mind processed the implications. He paced a few steps, then turned back to face her. "You're serious about this?" "Completely," Elena confirmed, finally extending the envelope. "All the details are in here. Legal structure, funding, facilities, team composition, everything." Tom took the envelope but didn't open it. "And us?" he asked quietly. "Was any of that real?" Elena's professional composure cracked, vulnerability shining through. "All of it. Every moment, every conversation, every—" She stopped, glancing down at her hands. "I understand if you feel deceived. But please know that the woman who sat at your workbench arguing about hydraulic pressures, who shared meals and dreams with you, she's the real me, much more than the CEO the world sees." Tom studied her face, looking past the polished exterior to the person he'd come to know over weeks of collaboration and connection. He saw anxiety there, and hope in something else, something that mirrored his own confused feelings, the ones he'd been trying to ignore as they grew stronger with each late-night work session. "I need time," he said finally, "to think about all of this." Elena nodded, accepting this without argument. "Of course!" She placed the envelope on the bench beside him. "Take all the time you need. Whatever you decide about the business proposal, I hope we can at least salvage something of what we were building." She began to wheel herself back toward the workshop where her car waited. Tom watched her go, torn between the urge to call her back and the need to process everything alone. "Elena," he called when she was halfway to the building. She stopped, turning her wheelchair to face him. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Finally, a small, sad smile touched her lips. "It's overdue, but better late than never, I hope." After she left, Tom remained on the bench long after darkness had fully descended, the envelope sitting heavy beside him like a doorway to another life. Eventually, he picked it up and returned to his workshop. The prototype they had created together sat on his workbench, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Tom ran his fingers along its smooth surface, remembering the hours of collaboration that had gone into its creation. The technical discussions, the shared excitement of breakthrough moments, the comfortable silences as they worked side by side. He opened the envelope, spreading the documents across his desk. The partnership offer was comprehensive. Full funding, creative control, cutting-edge facilities, a substantial salary, and a significant stake in the resulting patents. But what caught Tom's attention was a handwritten note tucked between the legal pages. "Tom, the night you asked what was going to change, I was afraid to tell you then, afraid you'd see me differently. I've spent my whole life being Elena Martinez CEO and the billionaire heiress who lost her leg and bought her way back to normal. But in your workshop, covered in grease and arguing about hydraulic pressures, I was just Elena, just a woman falling in love with a man who saw me, not my name or my bank account. What we created together isn't just a prosthetic. It's proof that dreams don't need corporate boardrooms or billion-dollar budgets. They need heart and talent and someone who refuses to believe in impossible. Whatever you decide about the partnership, please know that every moment with you was real. Every smile, every touch, every conversation. That was me. Just me. Tom set the note down, his vision blurring slightly. He moved to the prosthetic again, his mechanic's hands automatically checking connections and alignments as his mind processed everything he'd learned. The enormity of the decision before him was overwhelming. Accept Elena's offer, and his life would transform completely. From small-town mechanic to head of a medical device division, working alongside the woman who had awakened feelings he'd thought long dormant. Refuse and return to his comfortable routine, fixing engines instead of changing lives. It wasn't just a professional decision. It was personal in ways Tom hadn't anticipated when Elena first wheeled into his shop. Somewhere amid the technical discussions and late-night work sessions, she had become important to him. Not as a client or even as a collaborator, but as something more. He thought of Elena's dual identity, the powerful CEO and the woman who ate Chinese food with chopsticks in his dusty workshop. Were they really so different from his own split self? The practical mechanic and the frustrated innovator with abandoned dreams? Perhaps that was what had drawn them together. Not just their complementary skills, but their shared experience of being seen as less than their complete selves. As dawn approached, Tom finally made his decision. He reached for his phone, staring at Elena's contact information for a long moment before typing a message. The partnership needs work, but us? That was perfect, just as it was. He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then placed the phone on his workbench and waited. The response came almost immediately, as if Elena had been awake all night as well. Coffee tomorrow? Your office, not mine. I want to see where Elena Martinez, CEO, works. Tom smiled, replying, 9 a.m. Top floor, Martinez Tower. I'll tell security to expect you. As the sun began to rise over the Arizona desert, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold, Tom started to clean up his workshop. Today marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Whatever challenges lay ahead, professional and personal, he would face them with the same approach he used for every mechanical problem. One step at a time, with patience, determination, and an unwavering belief that with the right tools and enough heart, nothing was truly impossible. His phone buzzed one more time with a message from Elena. Thank you for seeing me. The real me. I promise no more secrets. Tom's reply was simple. I've always seen you. Now let's build something amazing together. Elena read Tom's message twice, her heart racing. The partnership needs work, but us. That was perfect just as it was. Setting down her phone, she allowed herself a moment of pure relief. He hadn't shut her out completely. She wheeled herself to the window of her penthouse apartment, overlooking the Phoenix skyline. The morning sun cast long shadows across the city, so different from the dusty warmth of Tom's workshop. For weeks, she had been living a double life. Corporate executive by day, collaborator, and something more by night. Now those worlds were colliding, and she wasn't sure if either could survive intact. Her phone buzzed with another message from Tom. Coffee tomorrow? Your office, not mine. I want to see where Elena Martinez, CEO, works. She typed back immediately, 9 a.m. Top floor, Martinez Tower. I'll tell security to expect you. The request surprised her. She had expected him to want to meet on neutral ground, or back in the familiar territory of his workshop. That he wanted to see her world, to understand that part of her life, spoke volumes about his willingness to try bridging their two realities. Elena glanced at the prototype prosthetic propped against her bedroom wall, the one they'd created together, the one she now wore daily instead of her expensive, corporate design model. It wasn't just more comfortable, it represented something genuine in a life often dominated by appearance and expectation. Moving to her desk, she pulled out the partnership proposal she'd presented to Tom. With a red pen, she began making notes in the margins, highlighting areas that needed refinement based on his cryptic needs work comment. The salary structure, the autonomy guarantees, the patent ownership split, all areas where a mechanic with no corporate experience might feel disadvantaged dealing with a billion-dollar company. If we're really going to be partners, she murmured to herself, it needs to be equal in every way that matters. She worked late into the night, refining the proposal and preparing for their meeting. When she finally went to bed, she found herself unusually nervous about seeing Tom in the morning. Not just about the business discussion, but about how he would react to seeing the corporate side of her life, the Elena Martinez that the rest of the world knew. The next morning, Elena found herself uncharacteristically anxious as she prepared for Tom's visit. She chose her outfit carefully, Professional enough for the 3 meetings on her calendar, but not the severe power suits she often wore as armor. The resulting compromise was a pair of well-tailored navy slacks and a soft cashmere sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back into her usual tight knot. She arrived at her office an hour earlier than usual, instructing her assistant to arrange the meeting room differently, more casual, with the prototype they'd been working on displayed prominently in the center, rather than hidden away as a special project. If Tom was going to see her world, she wanted it to reflect the integration she hoped to achieve between their different approaches. At 8:45, her private elevator chimed. Elena took a deep breath, smoothing her sweater nervously. "This is ridiculous," she chided herself. "You run a billion-dollar company. You've negotiated with world leaders. Why are you nervous about meeting a mechanic?" But Tom wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was the first person in years who had seen beyond her title and bank account to the woman underneath. The woman who loved getting her hands dirty solving technical problems, who preferred Chinese takeout to 5-star restaurants, who had spent years hiding her passion for innovation behind quarterly reports and shareholder presentations. At 8:55, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Martinez, there's a Thomas Harrington here to see you." "Send him in, Patricia," Elena replied, wheeling herself to the door of her spacious corner office. Tom stepped through the doorway, and Elena was struck by how out of place he looked among the sleek, modern furnishings. He wore clean jeans and a button-down shirt, dressed up by his standards, but his hands still bore the faint stains of years of mechanical work that no amount of scrubbing could remove. He carried a paper bag and 2 coffee cups. "I know you said coffee, but I thought I'd return the favor," he said, offering her one of the cups. "2 sugars, splash of cream." "You remembered," she said softly, accepting the cup. "I remember everything," he replied, and something in his tone made her believe he meant more than just her coffee preference. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken words. Then Tom glanced around the office, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the minimalist furniture, the walls adorned with patents and awards. "Nice view," he commented, moving to the window. "Different from mine." "Not better," Elena said quickly. "Just different." Tom turned to look at her, his expression softening. "That's what I wanted to hear." He set the paper bag on her desk and pulled out a plain, white bakery box. "The best bear claws in Arizona, according to Mrs. Peterson. And she's tried them all." Elena couldn't help but smile. Even here, in her corporate domain, Tom brought with him the simple authenticity of his world. "Please sit," she gestured to the chair across from her desk, then wheeled herself around to join him. "I spent all night reading your proposal," Tom said, opening the pastry box between them. "And researching you." Elena tensed slightly. "Find anything interesting?" "A lot, actually. The board pressure about affordable prosthetics. Your fight to change the company's direction." He selected a bear claw, breaking it in half. "You could have told me you were fighting the same battle I wanted to fight, just from a different angle." "I wasn't sure you believed me," Elena admitted, taking the half he offered. "The billionaire CEO claiming to care about accessibility? Sounds like a PR stunt." "Maybe from someone else," Tom acknowledged. "But I know you now, Elena. The real you." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. "So where does that leave us?" "Professionally, I have some conditions for the partnership." Tom pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I've made notes." Elena reached for it, but Tom held it just out of reach, his expression serious. "First, I want guarantees that cost will never compromise quality. These need to be affordable but perfect. No cutting corners to appease shareholders." Elena nodded. "I can build that into the contract." "Second, I keep my shop. Whatever development facility we set up, I maintain my regular business on the side. Those people depend on me." "That can be arranged," Elena agreed, surprised but touched by his loyalty to his community. "Third, and this one's non-negotiable," Tom's voice softened, "we keep working together directly. Not me reporting to some R&D head who reports to you. Us in the same room, arguing about hydraulic pressures until midnight." Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. "I think that can be arranged too." "Good." Tom finally handed her the paper. "The rest is just details." Elena skimmed his notes, impressed by his thoroughness. For someone with no corporate experience, he'd identified the key points that would protect the integrity of their project. She set the paper on her desk and looked up at him. "And personally," she asked quietly, "where does that leave us?" Tom leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. "Massa would, that depends." Was it all real? The conversations, the late nights, The way you looked at me when I wasn't just fixing your leg, but understanding your needs in a way no one else had? All of it, Elena whispered, not trusting her voice with more. I've never been more myself than I was in your workshop, Tom. That's why I couldn't bear to break the spell by telling you who I really was. Tom was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then I think we start over. Not from the beginning. We keep everything we built. But with complete honesty this time, he held out his hand. Hello, I'm Tom Harrington, small-town mechanic with big dreams about changing the prosthetics industry. Elena smiled, taking his offered hand. Elena Martinez, CEO with a mechanic's heart who's been looking for someone who sees past her title and bank account. The handshake lingered, neither wanting to be the first to let go. When they finally did, something had changed between them. A new understanding, a bridge between their worlds beginning to take shape. Show me, Tom said suddenly. Show you what? Your company, the whole operation. If we're going to do this, I need to understand what I'm getting into. Elena checked her watch. I have meetings, reschedule them, Tom interrupted. If I'm going to be a partner in this venture, your board should get used to me disrupting things. There was a challenge in his voice, a test to see if she meant what she said about their equal partnership. After a moment's hesitation, Elena pressed her intercom. Patricia, clear my schedule for today and tell Michael to meet us in the R&D lab in 30 minutes. Tom raised an eyebrow. Michael? As in Davidson, the man who came looking for you. My COO, Elena confirmed, and the most resistant to the affordable prosthetics initiative. Might as well introduce you to the opposition first. Tom smiled, a glint of determination in his eyes. Lead the way, Mr. Martinez. The elevator ride down to the R&D floor was silent, both of them processing the magnitude of what they were undertaking. Elena watched Tom from the corner of her eye, noting how he took in every detail of the corporate environment, the sleek design, the employees in business attire, the subtle displays of wealth and power. This was her world, so different from his dusty workshop with its mismatched chairs and coffee-stained work tables. Everyone's watching you, Tom observed quietly, noticing the curious glances from employees they passed. They're watching us, Elena corrected. No one has ever seen me bring an outsider on an impromptu tour, especially not one wearing jeans. Tom smiled, smoothing his button-down shirt self-consciously. Should I have worn a tie? Don't you dare change a thing, Elena replied, surprising herself with the fierceness in her voice. That's exactly what makes you valuable. You see things differently. The elevator doors opened directly into the R&D department, a sprawling, pristine environment that occupied the entire 22nd floor of Martinez Tower. White-coated technicians moved between testing stations, computers hummed, and through glass walls, state-of-the-art 3D printers created prototype components. Impressive, Tom acknowledged as Elena led him through the lab. But cold, Elena glanced at him. Cold? Clinical, Tom clarified. Everything's so sterile. He gestured toward a technician carefully measuring a component. Where's the intuition? The hands-on feel for what works? That's what's been missing, Elena said quietly. All the technology in the world can't replace what you have, Tom. That intuitive understanding of how things should work together. They paused at a testing station where the company's latest prosthetic model was undergoing stress analysis. Tom studied it with a critical eye, immediately spotting design elements he would have approached differently. The weight distribution is off, he murmured, more to himself than to Elena. It looks good on paper, but in daily use, that's going to cause hip strain after a couple of hours. A technician nearby overheard and frowned, clearly offended by this outsider's casual critique. The biomechanical simulation data indicates optimal weight distribution within standard parameters, he said stiffly. Tom nodded politely but turned to Elena. Have any of your engineers actually used these designs? Not just tested them, but lived with them? Before Elena could answer, a familiar voice interrupted them. Martinez. Michael Davidson approached, his expression professionally neutral, though his eyes betrayed his curiosity about Tom. I see our mechanic friend located you. Tom Harrington, Tom introduced himself, extending his hand. Soon to be head of the new affordable prosthetics division, I'm told. Michael's eyebrows rose as he shook Tom's hand, his gaze darting to Elena. I wasn't aware we had finalized any such arrangement. We haven't, Elena replied smoothly. But we will. Tom's design is exactly what we've been trying to develop for the past 2 years, Michael. And he did it in a workshop with spare parts and determination. Michael stepped closer, his expression guarded. With all due respect, Ms. Martinez, one prototype doesn't constitute a viable product line. There are regulatory hurdles, testing protocols, manufacturing considerations, all of which we'll address, Elena interrupted. But first, I want you to see what Tom has created. She turned to Tom. Show him. Tom hesitated, suddenly aware of how out of place his homemade prototype would look in this high-tech environment. But the certainty in Elena's eyes gave him confidence. From his backpack, he carefully withdrew their creation, setting it on a nearby workbench. This is what a Martinez Series 3 could be, he explained, maintaining direct eye contact with Michael. Same core function, but with a completely redesigned hydraulic system that delivers smoother motion, better durability, and, most importantly, can be manufactured at a fraction of the cost. Michael studied the prototype, professional curiosity overcoming his skepticism. The response mechanism is unorthodox, he observed, bending closer. You've adapted automotive hydraulics? Racing clutch technology? Modified to provide variable resistance, Tom confirmed. The beauty is in the simplicity. Fewer components means fewer failure points and lower production costs. Several nearby engineers had gathered, their initial dismissiveness giving way to professional interest as Tom explained his approach. One of them, a woman in her 40s with a Martinez medical ID badge identifying her as Dr. Chen, head of biomechanical engineering, asked a pointed question about pressure distribution. Tom answered without hesitation, sketching a quick diagram on a nearby notepad to illustrate his point. The key is thinking about the prosthetic not as a replacement part, but as an integrated system that works with the body's natural mechanics. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Unorthodox, but the principles are sound. She turned to Elena. This could work, Ms. Martinez. It would require significant retooling of our manufacturing processes, but if the performance metrics hold up, they will, Tom and Elena said simultaneously, then exchanged a quick smile. May I? Michael gestured toward the prototype. Tom nodded and the COO picked up the device, testing the joint movement with evident expertise. His expression shifted subtly from doubting to calculating. The market potential for a genuinely affordable prosthetic with this level of functionality would be significant, Michael admitted reluctantly. But our shareholders will benefit in the long run from expanded market share and increased volume, Elena finished for him. This isn't just about doing good, Michael. It's about doing good business. Tom watched the exchange with interest, seeing how Elena navigated corporate politics with the same precision she applied to technical problems. She was fighting for their vision on her turf now, and he felt a surge of admiration for her determination. I'll need to see comprehensive testing data, Michael said finally, setting the prototype down. Production cost projections, market analysis, regulatory compliance strategies. You'll have it all, Elena assured him. But first, we're going to give Tom a complete tour of our operations. He needs to understand what he's working with. Michael checked his watch. The board meeting is at 2. We'll proceed without me, Elena interrupted smoothly. This takes priority. After a moment's consideration, Michael nodded. I'll make your apologies to the board. He turned to Tom, offering his hand again. Welcome to Martinez Medical, Mr. Harrington. I look forward to seeing if your creation can live up to its promise. As Michael walked away, Dr. Chen stepped forward. I'd be interested in discussing your design approach further, Mr. Harrington. Perhaps you could join my team for a technical review session later this week? I'd like that, Tom replied, surprised by her receptiveness. But I think you've got it backward, Dr. Chen. I won't be joining your team. You might be joining mine. Elena suppressed a smile as she watched the engineer's expression shift from surprise to intrigue. Tom might lack corporate polish, but his confidence in his work and straightforward approach were already making an impression. After Dr. Chen excused herself, Tom turned to Elena with a raised eyebrow. Davidson doesn't like me much. He doesn't like change, Elena corrected, but he's brilliant at execution once he accepts a direction. We need him on our side. And is he? On our side? Elena smiled slightly. He will be. Michael respects results above all else. She gestured toward their prototype. And results are what we're going to deliver. For the next several hours, Elena led Tom through every department of Martinez Medical Technologies, from engineering to regulatory compliance, from manufacturing to marketing. She introduced him to key team members, explained workflows, and answered his increasingly technical questions with evident pride in her company. In the manufacturing wing, Tom spent nearly an hour discussing materials and processes with the production engineers, his practical experience complementing their theoretical knowledge. In the marketing department, he challenged their assumptions about user needs, pushing them to think beyond standard demographic metrics to consider the lived experience of prosthetic users. They're not customers, he insisted during one particularly heated exchange with the marketing director. They're people trying to live their lives as fully as possible. The prosthetic isn't a product, it's a tool for independence. By mid-afternoon, word had spread throughout the company about the mechanic who was revolutionizing their approach to prosthetic design. Some employees were skeptical, others curious, but all were talking about the unprecedented tour and what it might mean for the company's future. Elena watched with growing satisfaction as Tom absorbed information, asked insightful questions, and gradually won over even the most resistant corporate veterans with his combination of technical insight and genuine passion. This was exactly what Martinez Medical needed, an infusion of practical expertise and human-centered design thinking. As they moved through the regulatory compliance department, Tom's expression grew more serious. "This part worries me," he admitted quietly to Elena. "I know engines and hydraulics, not FDA regulations and clinical trials." "That's why we're partners," Elena reminded him. "You bring the innovation, I bring the infrastructure to make it viable in the market. Together, we cover all the bases." Tom nodded, some of his tension easing. "It's a lot to take in." "It is," Elena agreed, "but you don't have to learn it all at once. That's what teams are for." By late afternoon, they found themselves in Elena's private testing room, a simple space equipped with parallel bars and monitoring equipment where she evaluated new prosthetic designs herself. "This is where the real work happens," she explained, wheeling herself to the center of the room. "All the lab testing in the world can't replace the experience of actually using the device." Tom moved to stand beside her, taking in the room with its simple equipment, so different from the high-tech labs they'd visited. "This feels more like my workshop." "It's my favorite place in the building," Elena admitted. "The only place here where I feel completely myself." She hesitated, then added, "Until you came along and created another space where I could be me." Tom's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'm starting to think we need both worlds, Elena. Your resources and my approach. Your corporate structure and my workshop intuition. A bridge between precision and passion," Elena murmured, looking up at him. "Exactly." Tom's voice softened. "In both the professional and personal sense." The air between them charged with possibility, the corporate setting falling away as they found themselves back in the familiar territory of shared understanding. Tom leaned down slowly, giving Elena time to pull away if he'd misread the moment. Instead, she reached up, her hand gently touching his cheek as their lips met in a kiss that seemed to seal their newly formed partnership in more ways than one. It was tender, questioning at first, then growing in certainty as they both surrendered to the connection they'd been building since that first day in the workshop. When they finally parted, Elena's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the sensation. "That was a long time coming," she whispered. "Worth the wait," Tom replied, his forehead resting against hers. A knock at the door broke the moment. Elena wheeled back slightly as her assistant entered with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Martinez, but the board has requested your immediate presence. They're voting on the quarterly projections, and Mr. Davidson suggested you might want to be there." Elena sighed, the CEO mask slipping back into place. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Patricia." After her assistant left, Elena turned back to Tom with a rueful smile. "Reality calls." "Go," Tom said, understanding in his eyes. "Show them who's boss." Literally, when Elena laughed, the sound echoing in the small room. "We have a lot to figure out still. The partnership, the division structure, where you'll work. How will—" Tom silenced her with another brief kiss. "One step at a time. We built a working prosthetic from spare parts. I think we can handle building a future." As Elena prepared to wheel herself to the boardroom, she paused at the door. Dinner tonight? My place? I think it's my turn to cook for you." "I'll bring dessert," Tom replied, already looking forward to seeing another facet of Elena's life, another piece of the woman behind the CEO title. Elena's penthouse apartment occupied the top floor of a luxury high-rise in downtown Phoenix, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city and the distant mountains. But what struck Tom most as he stepped off the private elevator wasn't the obvious wealth on display. It was how little the space felt like the woman he'd come to know. The furnishings were sleek and modern, the artwork clearly expensive but impersonal, the overall effect more like a high-end hotel suite than a home. The only signs of the real Elena were subtle, A workbench tucked into one corner with tools and prosthetic components scattered across it, a bookshelf filled with engineering texts rather than coffee table art books, and photographs of an older man with Elena's same determined eyes, presumably her father. Elena welcomed him at the elevator, having changed from her business clothes into more casual attire, jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. The transformation from corporate CEO to the woman he'd worked alongside in his shop was striking. "Welcome to my plate," she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "It's not very homey, I know." "It's impressive," Tom said diplomatically, handing her a bakery box containing chocolate cake from his favorite local bakery. Elena laughed, seeing through his politeness. "It's cold and impersonal. I know. I rarely spend time here except to sleep." She gestured toward the kitchen, where pots bubbled on the stove. "But I do cook. Come see." The kitchen was the most lived-in space in the apartment, with professional-grade equipment that showed signs of regular use. Elena had prepared paella, the rich aroma of saffron and seafood filling the air. "My father was half Spanish," she explained, checking the rice. "Paella was our Sunday tradition when I was growing up. The one-time work wasn't allowed to be discussed." "It smells amazing," Tom said, genuinely impressed. "I had no idea you could cook like this." "There's a lot we still don't know about each other," Elena pointed out, turning off the heat. "But we have time to learn." Over dinner, they began filling in those gaps, sharing stories from their lives before they met. Tom told her about growing up in Riverdale, learning mechanics at his father's side while dreaming of building more than engines. Elena spoke of her childhood as the only heir to a growing medical supply company, her father's determination to make quality medical devices accessible to everyone, and the pressure she felt to honor his legacy. "He died just before my accident," Elena revealed, her expression softening with memory. "Pancreatic cancer. It was quick, diagnosis to funeral in 8 weeks. I barely had time to process becoming CEO before the crash that took my leg." "That's a lot to handle at once," Tom said quietly. Elena nodded, refilling their wine glasses. "The company changed after his death. The board saw an opportunity with me. Young, grieving, uncertain. They pushed for higher margins, more luxury products. By the time I recovered enough from the accident to really assert control, the direction was established." "And that's when you started fighting back," Tom guessed. "Pushing for the affordable lines again." "Yes, but not very effectively," Elena admitted. "I was playing their game by their rules. Quarterly reports, market analyses, cost projections. It wasn't working," she smiled at him across the table. "Until I met a certain mechanic who reminded me that sometimes you need to approach problems from a completely different angle." After dinner, they moved to the balcony, where comfortable chairs faced the spectacular view of Phoenix at night. The desert air had cooled, and Elena wrapped a light blanket around her shoulders as they sipped coffee and watched the city lights. "What happens tomorrow?" Tom asked finally, voicing the question that had been on both their minds all evening. "Professionally, I announced the new division to the executive team," Elena replied. "Then we start assembling your development team, securing facilities, establishing timelines." "And personally?" Elena turned to face him, her expression vulnerable in a way he rarely saw. "That's up to us to figure out. This is uncharted territory for me, Tom. I haven't had a real relationship since before the accident. My life has been the company. Mine hasn't been much different," Tom admitted. "Just substitute small town for company. I've been stuck in the same routine for years, fixing cars instead of pursuing what really mattered to me. And now here we are," Elena said softly, "both breaking out of our respective ruts." "Together," Tom added, reaching for her hand. "Together," she echoed, her fingers twining with his. The city stretched out before them, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, professional or personal, they would face them as they had faced everything else, combining her resources and his ingenuity, her corporate power and his workshop wisdom, creating something neither could achieve alone. As the evening grew later, Tom reluctantly prepared to leave. He had driven his old pickup truck to her building, earning curious looks from the valets accustomed to luxury vehicles. Now, standing by the private elevator, he felt the disparity between their worlds acutely. "I should go," he said, though he was reluctant to break the connection they'd established. "Big day tomorrow." Elena nodded but made no move to call the elevator. "Or you could stay," she suggested quietly. "It's late, and you have a long drive back to Riverdale." The invitation hung between them, weighted with possibility. Tom studied her face, seeing vulnerability mixed with certainty in her eyes. "I'd like that," he said simply. Elena smiled, relieved and happy, Good. As they moved back into the apartment, leaving the city lights behind, both understood that this was another bridge being built between them, another step toward a shared future neither had imagined possible just weeks ago when a determined woman in a wheelchair entered a dusty workshop looking for help with a broken prosthetic. What they had found instead was something far more valuable, a partnership that transcended professional collaboration, a connection that saw past titles and backgrounds to the essential qualities each brought to the table, and perhaps most importantly, the courage to break free of the limitations that had held them back, her corporate constraints, his small-town boundaries, and build something revolutionary together. Tomorrow would bring corporate announcements, team formations, and the beginning of their professional partnership. But tonight was about confirming what both already knew, that their connection went far beyond business, into a territory neither had expected to explore, but both now embraced wholeheartedly. One step at a time, Tom had said earlier, and as they faced this new phase of their relationship, the philosophy seemed more fitting than ever. One step at a time, they would build not just a revolutionary prosthetic, but a bridge between their worlds, their experiences, their hearts. And like everything they created together, it would be stronger, more resilient, and more genuine than anything either could have built alone. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The affordable prosthetics division of Martinez Medical Technologies took shape under Tom's leadership, occupying a converted warehouse not far from his original workshop. Elena had insisted on maintaining the industrial character of the space, arguing that the creative environment was as important as the advanced equipment they installed. The morning sun streamed through the skylights as Tom moved between workstations, observing his growing team of engineers and technicians. Some came from Elena's corporate world, bringing technical expertise and regulatory knowledge. Others were mechanical savants Tom had recruited from auto shops and technical schools, people with intuitive understanding of how things should work and the hands-on skills to make it happen. The pressure distribution on the Series A still isn't right, Ramirez, a former motorcycle mechanic turned prosthetic engineer, pointed out as Tom approached his station. Feels jerky in the transition from standing to walking? Tom examined the prototype, his fingers testing the mechanism. Try recalibrating the foot-ankle response time. Maybe drop it by 7 milliseconds? The young engineer nodded, immediately making adjustments. This was why the team respected Tom. He didn't just direct, he collaborated, his hands as dirty as theirs in the daily work of creation. Tom, Elena's voice carried across the workshop floor. She wheeled herself between workstations with practiced ease, wearing casual clothes with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Here she wasn't the CEO, but a fellow developer and their most demanding test subject. Tom looked up, his face brightening at the sight of her. Despite their professional partnership and growing personal relationship, these moments still gave him a surge of happiness, seeing Elena in her element, passionate and focused. The board approved the expanded testing protocol, she announced, reaching his side. We can move forward with 50 test subjects instead of 20. That's fantastic, Tom replied, the implications immediately clear. More test subjects meant more diverse feedback, more real-world data, and ultimately a better final product. What changed Davidson's mind? Elena smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. The preliminary results from our first test group, satisfaction ratings 47% higher than standard models, durability testing showing 72% improvement over comparable prosthetics, and, she paused for effect, projected manufacturing costs 62% lower than our current baseline. Tom whistled. They knew their design was good, but seeing the data quantified like that made the achievement even more remarkable. Did Davidson actually smile when he saw those numbers? I think one corner of his mouth may have twitched upward slightly, Elena laughed. Coming from Michael, that's practically dancing on the table. Their shared laughter drew glances from nearby team members, many of whom were still adjusting to the unusual dynamic between the billionaire CEO and the former small-town mechanic. The two operated as equals, each deferring to the other's expertise in different areas, their creative disagreements as passionate as their moments of synchronicity. We should celebrate, Tom suggested, checking the time. Early lunch? That food truck you like is parked down the street today. Elena nodded enthusiastically, but before she could respond, her phone rang with the distinctive tone she'd assigned to urgent corporate matters. Her expression shifted slightly as she answered. Martinez. Yes, Michael. When? Her face grew serious. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Prepare the conference room and have legal standing by." She ended the call, her CEO mask sliding into place. Neurotech is making a move. They've announced a revolutionary affordable prosthetic line at the Chicago Medical Expo this morning. Tom frowned. Neurotech was their largest competitor, a company known more for aggressive business tactics than innovation. Is it possible they've developed something similar to ours? Michael doesn't think so. Their announcement is suspiciously timed, just 2 weeks after our patent application was published. Elena's voice hardened. They're trying to steal our thunder, maybe even our intellectual property. Tom processed this, feeling a protective surge toward their creation. What does this mean for our timeline? We may need to accelerate. Elena was already turning her wheelchair toward the exit. I have to handle this at corporate. The lawyers will need detailed technical comparisons if they've infringed on our design. Tom nodded, immediately shifting into problem-solving mode. I'll pull together all our technical documentation and testing data, and I'll have the team prepare detailed analysis of our unique design elements. Perfect. Elena paused, torn between her corporate responsibilities and her reluctance to leave their creative sanctuary. I'm sorry about lunch. Rain check, Tom assured her. Go be the CEO. I'll handle things here. She smiled gratefully, then hesitated before adding, This is the first real test of our partnership, Tom. Corporate crisis meeting my innovation division. Our innovation division, he corrected gently, and we'll pass this test like we passed every other one. Together, just from different angles. Elena reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly before wheeling herself toward the exit. I'll call you as soon as I know more. After she left, Tom gathered the senior team members, briefing them on the situation. There was no panic, only focused determination as they organized into groups to document their work and prepare for potential challenges to their innovation. Ramirez, focus on the hydraulic response system. That's our most unique component. Chen, I need comprehensive documentation on the materials science innovations. Patel, bring together all our testing data, especially the comparison metrics against current market leaders. The team dispersed with purpose, leaving Tom standing in the center of the workshop. He moved to the display case where they kept their original prototype, the one he and Elena had built together in his small repair shop. It seemed like a lifetime ago, those early days of discovery and connection. His phone buzzed with a message from Elena. Emergency board meeting called. This might be a long day. Don't wait up tonight. Tom replied, I've got things covered here. Show them why you're the boss. Tucking his phone away, Tom rolled up his sleeves and joined Ramirez at his workstation. If Neurotech wanted a fight, they'd get one. But it wouldn't be just with Elena's corporate legal team. They'd be facing the combined force of mechanical ingenuity and corporate muscle, a partnership unlike anything the industry had seen before. The corporate response to Neurotech's announcement was swift and decisive. By evening, Martinez Medical had issued a public statement highlighting their own upcoming prosthetic line, complete with preliminary performance data that overshadowed Neurotech's vague promises. Their legal team had also filed for additional patent protections on key components of their design. It was past midnight when Elena finally returned to the Innovation Center, finding Tom still at work, surrounded by technical documents and prototype components. You should be home sleeping, she chided gently, wheeling herself to his workbench. Tom looked up, the weariness in his eyes matching hers. So should you. How was the corporate battlefield? Bloody but victorious, Elena replied, rubbing her temples. The board is fully behind us now. Nothing unites corporate directors like a competitive threat. Even Michael? Especially Michael. Elena smiled tiredly. He's taking this very personally. I think he's actually offended that Neurotech might have stolen our designs. Tom pushed aside his work and moved to the small kitchen area they'd installed in the corner of the workshop. He returned with 2 cups of tea, offering one to Elena. The team pulled together amazing documentation today, he told her, settling into the chair beside her wheelchair. If Neurotech has copied any element of our design, we'll be able to prove it. Elena sipped her tea, the warmth seeming to restore some of her energy. But that's not what you're really working on so late, is it? Her eyes drifted to the prototype components scattered across his workbench. Tom smiled sheepishly. No, I had an idea about improving the ankle articulation. If Neurotech is entering the affordable prosthetics market, we need to stay 2 steps ahead. Always innovating, Elena said fondly. That's why they can't beat us, Tom. They can copy a design, but they can't copy the creative spirit behind it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both feeling the weight of the day's challenges, but drawing strength from each other's presence. I got a call from Dr. Patel at the VA hospital, Tom said finally. He's interested in having some of his patients participate in our testing program. Elena's face brightened. Veterans were always one of our target demographics. It's coming full circle, Tom mused. My original dream after leaving the Army was to develop prosthetics for veterans. Now we're actually doing it. Life has a way of bringing us back to what matters, Elena said softly. She hesitated, then added, speaking of which, I've been thinking about our work-life balance. Tom raised an eyebrow. What about it? We don't have one, Elena stated bluntly. And that needs to change. We're building something revolutionary here, but we're also building a relationship. Both need attention to thrive. Tom reached for her hand. What are you suggesting? 1 day a week, no prosthetics talk, no corporate crisis management. Just us doing normal couple things. Normal couple things? Tom repeated with a smile. I'm not sure either of us remembers what those are. We can figure it out together, Elena suggested. Starting this Sunday, a full day off. No exceptions, no emergencies, no brilliant middle-of-brunch design inspirations. That might be asking a lot, Tom teased, though the idea appealed to him more than he wanted to admit. The past 6 months had been exhilarating but exhausting. Their relationship developing in stolen moments between professional obligations. Consider it our next design challenge, Elena pressed. Creating a sustainable life model, not just a sustainable business one. Tom's expression softened. When you put it that way, how can I refuse? He leaned forward, kissing her gently. Sunday it is. No work allowed. Elena smiled against his lips. Sealed with a kiss. Now it's officially a contract. They gathered their things, turning out lights as they prepared to leave the workshop. At the door, Tom paused, looking back at the space they'd created together. Not quite his homey repair shop, not quite Elena's sterile corporate lab, but something uniquely theirs, a perfect blend of both their worlds. We're going to win this, aren't we? He asked, not just referring to the competition with neurotech. Elena followed his gaze, understanding the broader question. We already have, Tom. Everything else is just details. Sunday arrived with perfect Arizona weather. Clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, and temperatures mild enough for outdoor activities. Tom arrived at Elena's penthouse apartment earlier than usual, a picnic basket in hand. No workshop, no corporate headquarters, he announced when she opened the door. Just us in Papago Park for the day. Elena beamed, clearly approving of the plan. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a light blouse, and had switched to a sportier wheelchair, better suited for outdoor terrain. I packed sunscreen, she said, holding up a bag, and my hiking prosthetic. The hiking prosthetic was one of their recent innovations, designed for uneven terrain with enhanced shock absorption and terrain adaptation. It was still in the testing phase, but Elena had been eager to try it in real-world conditions. No shop talk, Tom reminded her with a smile, though he was equally curious about how the prosthetic would perform. The park was busy with weekend visitors, families spreading blankets under trees, joggers on the paths, and children flying kites in open areas. Tom found them a secluded spot near a small pond, sheltered by desert willows that provided dappled shade. As they settled onto the blanket Tom spread out, Elena removed her regular prosthetic and attached the hiking model, her movements practiced and efficient. Tom tried not to watch with a designer's eye, but he couldn't help noticing the smooth transition and the stability it provided as she positioned herself. It feels good, Elena said, catching his observant gaze. But that's all I'm saying on the subject. I promise no shop talk. Tom held up his hands in surrender. Completely innocent observation. He unpacked the picnic basket, revealing an assortment of sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of wine. I stopped by that deli you like downtown. They ate in comfortable companionship, their conversation deliberately steering away from work topics. Instead, they shared stories from their lives before they met. Tom's childhood in Riverdale, learning mechanics at his father's side, Elena's college years studying biomedical engineering before joining her father's company. I never thought I'd end up running the company, Elena admitted, leaning back on her elbows. I wanted to be in the lab, designing. My father was supposed to be the business genius. What happened? Tom asked, refilling their wine glasses. Elena's expression softened with memory. He got sick my senior year of college. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they diagnosed it, it was already stage 4. She paused, eyes distant. He spent his last months preparing me to take over. Crash course in corporate leadership from a hospital bed. Tom reached for her hand, squeezing gently. He'd be proud of what you built. I think he would, Elena agreed. Especially this new direction. Making quality prosthetics accessible to everyone was his original vision, before investors and market pressures pushed us toward the high-end market exclusively. She caught herself and laughed. And there I go, talking about work again. I'm terrible at this day off thing. We both are, Tom admitted. Maybe we need to practice more often. I'd like that, Elena said softly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that had nothing to do with prosthetic design or corporate strategy. They spent the afternoon exploring the park, Elena testing her hiking prosthetic on various terrains, while steadfastly refusing to comment on its performance professionally. They discovered a shared love of desert plants, arguing good-naturedly about the names of different cacti and wildflowers. As the sun began to set, painting the desert landscape in shades of orange and purple, they found themselves on a rocky outcropping overlooking the city. Beautiful, Tom said, though his eyes weren't on the view but on Elena, her face glowing in the sunset light, her hair lifted by the gentle breeze. It is, she agreed, mistaking his focus. Then catching his gaze, she smiled. You're not looking at the sunset. I've seen sunsets before, Tom replied simply. They're nice, but I've never seen anything quite like you, Elena Martinez. The directness of his words caught them both by surprise. They had been circling deeper feelings for months, their relationship growing amid the whirlwind of their professional partnership. But neither had put those feelings into such unambiguous terms. Elena's expression softened, vulnerability replacing her usual confidence. Even after learning everything about me, the corporate world, the board pressures, the complex reality behind the woman who wheeled into your shop? Especially after learning all that, Tom assured her, moving closer. You're extraordinary in every version of yourself, Elena. The CEO, the engineer, the woman eating Chinese takeout in my workshop at midnight. I love all of them. The word love hung in the air between them, finally spoken after months of being felt but left unvoiced. Elena reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. I didn't come to your workshop looking for this, she admitted quietly. I just wanted a better prosthetic. And I just wanted to be a better mechanic, Tom replied with a smile. Look at us now, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Building a prosthetics division, challenging industry giants, and falling in love on a hillside, Tom finished for her, the words feeling both terrifying and absolutely right. Elena's eyes shimmered with emotion. I do, you know. Love you. All versions of you. The small-town mechanic, the brilliant innovator, the man who sees me as just Elena. Tom cupped her face gently, his calloused fingers contrasting with her smooth skin. Then I'd say our day off has been incredibly productive after all. She laughed softly, leaning into his touch. Don't tell the board. They might mandate more of them. Wouldn't that be terrible, she whispered as he leaned in to kiss her, the sunset forgotten as they found something far more beautiful in each other's arms. The tranquility of Sunday gave way to the chaos of Monday morning. Tom arrived at the Innovation Center to find the team gathered around monitors displaying news from the Chicago Medical Expo, where Neurotech was officially unveiling their revolutionary, affordable prosthetic line. It's definitely inspired by our design, Ramirez pointed out, zooming in on images from the presentation. Look at the joint mechanism. It's a crude copy of our hydraulic system. Tom studied the images, his experienced eye immediately catching the differences. But they missed the core innovation. See how they've replicated the appearance but not the underlying pressure distribution system? That's going to result in jerky transitions and poor weight distribution. So they rushed a knockoff to market, Chen concluded, arms crossed. Typical Neurotech, more interested in appearances than functionality. The elevator doors opened and Elena wheeled in, followed by Michael Davidson and two members of the legal team. The executives looked as if they'd been up all night, their usual corporate polish slightly diminished by the crisis. Good, you're already analyzing it, Elena said, moving to join the group at the monitors. What's your assessment, Tom? It's based on our published design, but they've cut corners on the internal mechanics, Tom replied, pointing to specific elements on the screen. They've prioritized looking similar over functioning properly. Michael stepped closer, his expression unusually animated. Can you quantify the performance differences? Our legal team needs concrete comparisons, Tom nodded. We can run simulations based on what we're seeing and produce comparative metrics by end of day. But the real proof will come when their units reach actual users. That's already happening, one of the lawyers interjected. They're distributing beta units to selected patients at the expo, positioning it as a special preview opportunity. Elena's jaw tightened. They're using people as unwitting test subjects for an unproven design. It gets worse, Michael added grimly. Their CEO is claiming a 70% cost reduction compared to standard models, undercutting our projected price point by nearly 15%. A tense silence fell over the group as the implications sank in. Neurotech was attempting to steal not just their design concept, but their market position, potentially undermining months of work before they could even launch. Tom exchanged a look with Elena, seeing the same determination in her eyes that he felt. "We need to accelerate," he said simply. Elena nodded. "How quickly can we move to limited production and patient trials?" "The design is solid," Tom considered. "We'd need to compress our testing timeline, but with careful selection of test subjects and intensive monitoring, we could have verified units ready in 6 weeks instead of 3 months. Michael's eyebrows rose. "That's extremely aggressive." "But doable," Tom insisted. "If and only if we maintain our quality standards. I won't cut corners on safety or functionality, no matter what Neurotech does." "I wouldn't ask you to," Elena assured him. She turned to Michael. "Prepare the manufacturing division for an accelerated timeline, and have marketing develop a response strategy that emphasizes our commitment to thorough testing and superior functionality." Michael nodded, already making notes on his tablet. "What about the price point issue?" Elena glanced at Tom before responding. "We stick to our original pricing. Our product will deliver genuine value that justifies the difference. Quality over corner cutting every time." As the corporate team moved to implement these decisions, Tom pulled Elena aside. Are you sure about the pricing? The board might push back if Neurotech is undercutting us significantly." "Let me worry about the board," Elena said with quiet confidence. "You focus on making our design sing. If our prosthetic performs as well in production as it does in testing, the price difference won't matter." Tom nodded, appreciating once again her unwavering commitment to their shared vision. "Sunday seems like a distant memory already." "We'll have more Sundays," Elena promised, squeezing his hand briefly before shifting back into CEO mode. "For now, we fight." The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The Innovation Center operated nearly around the clock, with team members taking shifts to maintain continuous progress. Tom and Elena barely saw each other outside of work, their relationship momentarily subordinated to the professional crisis demanding their attention. Production prototypes were developed, tested, refined, and retested. A carefully selected group of patients began trials with the new prosthetics, providing daily feedback that the team incorporated into ongoing adjustments. The manufacturing division prepared for scaled production, while marketing developed a campaign emphasizing the superior engineering and rigorous testing behind their design. Through it all, Tom and Elena maintained an unspoken understanding. This temporary imbalance was necessary, their personal relationship strong enough to withstand the demands of their shared professional mission. The moment of truth came on a Wednesday afternoon, exactly 43 days after Neurotech's announcement. Tom stood in Elena's corporate office, watching as she concluded a video call with a prosthetic user from their trial group, a former athlete who had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident 2 years earlier. "The difference is night and day," the man was saying, his enthusiasm evident even through the screen. "I've been using the Neurotech model for 3 weeks and yours for just 5 days, but there's no comparison. The stability during direction changes, the natural feel of the weight transfer, it's like having part of myself back, not just a mechanical replacement." Elena's professional demeanor couldn't quite hide her emotion as she thanked him for his feedback and ended the call. When she turned to Tom, her eyes were shining. "That's the 7th testimonial like that today," she said quietly. "We did it, Tom. We really did it." Tom moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We did it right," he corrected gently. "That's what matters." Elena covered his hand with hers. "The board has unanimously approved the production schedule. We launch in 2 weeks with the first units available to veterans and lower-income patients through our subsidy program." "Perfect timing," Tom noted, "just as the first wave of complaints about Neurotech's units is hitting social media." Elena nodded, her expression turning serious. "Michael says their stock dropped 8 points today. There are rumors their CEO might be forced to step down over the rushed product launch." "I can't say I'm sorry," Tom admitted. "They gambled with people's mobility and independence." "While we took the harder, longer road," Elena agreed. She looked up at him, sudden vulnerability replacing her corporate confidence. 6 weeks of barely seeing each other outside of work. "Was it worth it?" Tom knelt beside her wheelchair, taking both her hands in his. "Every exhausting minute of it," he assured her. "Because we did it together and we did it right." he smiled. But I think we've earned another day off, don't you? Elena laughed, the sound releasing weeks of tension. More than one. In fact, she hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic shyness. I was thinking maybe we need a whole week off. Together. Somewhere that isn't a workshop or a corporate office. Tom raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting a vacation, Ms. Martinez? Can the mighty CEO of Martinez Medical possibly step away for that long? She can if she has a brilliant division head who can handle things in her absence, Elena countered, her eyes twinkling. Know anyone who might fit that description? I might, Tom pretended to consider, but he'll expect compensation for the extra responsibility. What kind of compensation did you have in mind? Tom's expression softened. Just you. No prosthetics, no corporate crises, no competing responsibilities. Just Elena and Tom figuring out what comes next. Elena's smile widened. I think that can be arranged. She leaned forward, sealing the agreement with a kiss that promised both resolution and new beginnings. The journey from that first meeting in Tom's workshop to this moment had been filled with challenges, revelations, and compromises. But as they held each other in the late afternoon sunlight streaming through Elena's office windows, both knew with absolute certainty that they had built something remarkable together. Not just a revolutionary prosthetic, but a partnership that bridged worlds and transformed both their lives in ways neither could have imagined alone. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new tests and trials, both professional and personal, but they would face them as they had faced everything else. Together, combining her resources and his ingenuity, her corporate power and his workshop wisdom, creating something greater than either could achieve alone. A bridge between precision and passion indeed. 1 year later, Tom stood in the doorway of his original workshop, watching as the morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete floor. The space looked both familiar and strange. The same tools hung on the walls. The same ancient fan hummed overhead. But the cars that once filled the bay spaces were gone, replaced by workbenches and testing equipment. After the successful launch of their affordable prosthetic line, Tom had transformed Harrington's auto repair into the Harrington Innovation Lab, a satellite facility of the larger division he now headed at Martinez Medical. Here he and a small team explored new ideas without the corporate structure that sometimes slowed innovation, bringing the most promising concepts back to the main facility for refinement and eventual production. Getting nostalgic? Elena's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She wheeled up beside him, wearing jeans and a Martinez Medical t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. Just appreciating how things come full circle, Tom replied, putting an arm around her shoulders. 1 year ago, I was fixing Mrs. Peterson's Buick in this exact spot, wondering if I'd ever do anything more meaningful with my life. Elena smiled up at him. And now Mrs. Peterson's Buick gets fixed at the garage down the street, and I'm designing prosthetics that are changing lives around the world. He squeezed her shoulder gently. Not a bad trade. The board received the quarterly impact report yesterday, Elena told him, pride evident in her voice. Over 15,000 units distributed in the first year, with a 96% satisfaction rating. And thanks to the subsidy program, nearly 40% went to patients who couldn't have afforded standard prosthetics. Tom nodded, his own pride tempered by the awareness of how much more remained to be done. And the pediatric prototypes? Final testing stage, Elena confirmed. We should be ready for limited production next month. Her expression softened. You were right about starting with adult models and adapting rather than trying to design separate systems from scratch. The modular approach is working exactly as you predicted. Tom smiled, remembering the passionate debates they'd had about this very issue. Well, you were right about the marketing approach. Focusing on functionality rather than competing directly with neurotech on price was brilliant. We make a good team, Elena said simply. The best, Tom agreed, leaning down to kiss her lightly. The sound of a vehicle pulling up outside interrupted the moment. Tom looked past Elena to see a familiar black SUV parking beside the workshop. Davidson's early, he noted with surprise. Michael's never early, Elena countered, checking her watch with a frown. Our meeting isn't for another hour. They moved to the entrance, watching as Michael Davidson emerged from the vehicle. The past year had softened some of the COO's corporate stiffness. Working closely with Tom's team had given him a new appreciation for their unconventional approach. But he still maintained an air of professional precision in everything he did. Today, however, he looked uncharacteristically animated, practically jogging to the workshop door with a tablet clutched in his hand. "You need to see this," he said without preamble, bypassing normal greetings. "It just came in from our Seattle test group." Tom and Elena exchanged a glance, immediately concerned. The Seattle group was testing their newest adaptation, a waterproof design specifically engineered for maritime occupations. "Problem?" Tom asked, already mentally reviewing the design specifications for potential flaws. "Quite the opposite," Michael replied, his usually impassive face breaking into an actual smile as he handed Elena the tablet. "This changes everything." Elena's eyes widened as she scanned the document, then passed the tablet to Tom. "Is this verified?" she asked Michael. "Triple check," the executive confirmed. "The numbers are solid." Tom studied the test results, his mechanical mind quickly processing the implications. The Seattle group had subjected their prosthetics to conditions far beyond the design parameters. Extended submersion in salt water, extreme temperature variations, pressure testing at depths that would challenge even specialized diving equipment. The prosthetics hadn't just survived, they had maintained full functionality with minimal performance degradation. "This opens up entirely new possibilities," Tom murmured, already envisioning applications beyond their original scope. Search and rescue operations, marine biology fieldwork, deep-sea commercial diving, military applications, Michael added. "The Navy has already expressed interest based on preliminary results." Elena wheeled herself to the center of the workshop, her expression thoughtful. "This goes beyond prosthetic," she said slowly. "The waterproofing and pressure resistance technology could be adapted for other medical devices. Implantable monitors, emergency equipment for maritime rescue. A whole new division," Michael suggested, business instincts immediately recognizing the potential. "Martinez Maritime Medical." Tom laughed at the executive's quick pivot to branding, but his mind was already racing along similar paths, seeing how their original innovation could branch into unexpected directions, helping even more people than they had initially imagined. "We'd need to expand the development team," he thought aloud. "Bring in marine engineering expertise, pressure testing equipment." "Slow down, both of you," Elena interrupted, though her eyes sparkled with the same excitement. "One step at a time. Let's complete the current testing, verify these results independently, and then present a comprehensive proposal to the board." Michael nodded, already making notes on his phone. "I'll have the legal team start exploring patent protections for the new applications, and I'll reschedule our budget meeting for tomorrow. This clearly takes priority." As Michael returned to his vehicle to make calls, Elena turned to Tom with a shake of her head. "Remember when he thought you were just a small-town mechanic who couldn't possibly understand corporate medical device development? To be fair, that's exactly what I was," Tom replied with a grin. "No," Elena countered softly. "You were always more than that. I saw it that first day, watching you examine my prosthetic with the same care and understanding you'd give to a complex engine." Her expression grew serious. "You just needed someone to believe in your potential." Tom knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. "We both did. You were trapped in corporate expectations. I was stuck in small-town limitations. Together, we broke free of both." Elena squeezed his hands, her eyes meeting his with the same connection that had sparked between them from the beginning. "And now look at us, about to revolutionize maritime medical technology." "Among other things," Tom agreed, his voice softening as he reached into his pocket. "I actually had something else planned for today, but since Davidson crashed our quiet morning..." Elena's breath caught as Tom pulled out a small velvet box. "Tom?" He opened it to reveal a simple but elegant ring, a sapphire set in brushed platinum. "I designed it myself," he explained unnecessarily. "The setting is based on the pressure distribution system we developed for the prosthetic. Symbolism and all that." Elena laughed even as tears formed in her eyes. "Of course you engineered an engagement ring." "Elena Martinez," Tom said, suddenly serious. "We've built something remarkable together, professionally and personally. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered without hesitation. 1,000 times yes." As Tom slipped the ring onto her finger, the morning sunlight caught the metal, sending reflections dancing across the workshop walls. The same workshop where an unexpected visitor had once brought new purpose to a lonely mechanic's life. Michael cleared his throat from the doorway, looking uncharacteristically awkward at having interrupted such a moment. "I can come back later." "No need," Elena said, wiping joyful tears from her cheeks. "You're just in time to be the first to congratulate us." The COO's face softened into a genuine smile as he stepped forward to shake Tom's hand, and kiss Elena's cheek. "It's about time," he said simply. "The entire executive team has had a betting pool for months." "Who won?" Tom asked with a laugh. "Ramirez, actually," Michael admitted. "He predicted you'd propose in the original workshop, said it was where your story began." "Smart man," Tom acknowledged. "We'll have to promote him." As Michael excused himself to give them a moment alone, Tom and Elena stood, or sat in her case, in the center of the workshop where everything had started, the past and future converging in a perfect moment of completion and new beginning. "What happens now?" Elena asked softly. Tom smiled, helping her adjust the ring to sit more comfortably on her finger. "Now we keep doing what we've always done, innovating, improving, making things better together. Just with slightly fancier titles. And a shared last name?" Elena suggested. "Martinez Harrington has a nice ring to it," Tom agreed. "For both us and the company." Elena laughed, pulling him down for another kiss. "Always thinking of the branding." "I learned from the best," Tom murmured against her lips. Outside, the Arizona sun climbed higher in the clear blue sky, casting new light on the sign above the workshop door. Harrington Innovation Lab, a division of Martinez Medical Technologies. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds embraced their shared future, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The mechanic and the CEO, united by common purpose and uncommon love. The tools on the walls were different now, the projects more complex than simple car repairs, but the essential spirit remained unchanged, fixing what was broken, improving what worked, and never forgetting that the most important innovations came not from corporate boardrooms or technical specifications, but from human hearts determined to make the world better, one creation at a time. Full circle indeed.